inverse or arctangent, and it is restricted. Where are you going to look to find where it's restricted to? That table, right? You remember that table we wrote down? And so this is restricted to the first and fourth quadrants, between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. So which one is the answer to arctangent of 0? The one on the right, which is 0. Okay. Does that make sense? You do.
Is this radians?
But even if it were degrees, it wouldn't still be 0. Do what? Yeah. 0.
I just
No. Because it's only set up. And you have to wait on this.
this kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Okay. I need to stay with me. Cotangent inverse of negative 1. So I'm asking myself when you cotangent negative 1. Now normally cotangent could be negative in quadrants 2 or 4, right? And negative 1 is on a 45, 90 triangle, right? So the answer is either 3 pi over 4 or negative pi over 4. Now I need to go look back at my table and see which quadrant is cotangent defined in. 1 and 2. So what is the answer? 3 pi over 4. Is that making sense? Which answer we're going to give and why? Next one's interesting, and I'm going to play it out. You probably all know the answer. But I'm going to work from the inside out and just... if you thought a little harder. So I'm going to start with the inside. Secant inverse of 2. Okay, can I go find secant inverse of 2? Okay, secant first quadrant, hypotenuse over adjacent, right? So that's a 30, 60, 90 pi over 3. Everyone agree? So this is really what's the secant of pi over 3? And what is the secant of pi over 3?
2.
Yeah? Does that make sense? The secant of pi over 3 is hypotenuse over adjacent. Did that feel like a silly question?
Yes.
It didn't feel like we were kind of running circles there. Why?
You get 2.
Secant of pi over 3, unit circle question could have been on your unit circle quiz.
Go on my unit circle. Here.
No, because that's not secant. How do you find secant? Take a quizzing is key. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, right? What's cosine? Okay. So what is cosine? Okay, so let's see. Okay, yes. What? Okay, let's listen to that again. Maddie's making some. Oh, points, right?
It makes sense.
Would it make sense that secant and secant inverse would just cancel out?
Yeah. What?
Well, if you figured out it, maybe I wouldn't have to do it, right? Right? You remember it felt like we were running in circles, didn't it? Because we were. We did something and then undid it. Right? Yeah, those cancel, but I mean, if you figured out to do it, then.
I'm not that smart.
Alright, so this is picking up where we left off yesterday. The calculator typing in. Do we remember how we typed in the top one in our calculator?
Over 1.
Because what's the
That is the over cost. Negative cost. No one knows.
Look at we did this wrong in class yesterday, guys. We need to quit that.
It's 1 over.
It's 1 over.
No.
Yeah, we just want to watch what you do.
No! This is what you should at least know. You may not know why it is.
1, 8, 2, 3.
Oh, I wrote that down.
Okay.
No, it's pi over 4.
No, we gotta write it out in numbers. She made us.
It's a decimal.
Negative 1.529. Or point.
23. I want to know what you're typing in your calculator. Okay, here's what we decided we needed to type in yesterday. Now, let's talk about why. Anytime you are using your calculator, you need to remind yourself to pick your brain back up. For some reason, when you pick your calculators up, you think your brain gets to go away. Calculators are stupid. They know nothing. They just do nothing really fast. And so they give you answers, but they aren't thinking. So they will give you very wrong answers. And you'll say, my calculator messed up. It did not. You messed up. So let's figure out why we need to type cosine inverse
Oh, is it?
of negative 1/4 in our calculator. Worst case scenario, stop and draw a picture, right? Even though I'm going to use my calculator, I could stop and draw a picture and think about it. Secant is negative 4, so that would be in the second quadrant because secant inverse is only defined in the second quadrant if it's negative, right, versus second. Secant is hypotenuse over adjacent, right? Well, I can't type secant in my calculator. There is no secant button. There's definitely a secant inverse button. So if I want to get my calculator to get me that inverse, I'm going to have to use cosine instead of secant. Well, what's the cosine here? It's negative 1/4, right? So that's why I'm going to use cosine inverse of negative 1/4. But that's a tough one, and it's tough because there's no secant inverse button. So we actually have to change it into cosine first, and then use the cosine inverse button. Never use 1 over cosine inverse. It won't give you anything good. The 1 over cosine will give you secant, but to do the inverse, you have to flip on the inside. Okay? Now this one's really difficult. Okay, let's think of that question first. How do you flip it if it's a decimal?
Put it over 1,000.
Put 1 over it, right? Put 1 over it.
Put 1 over.
1 divided by that, that's the reciprocal, right? It's that over. So I just did 2. Okay, so let's do tan inverse of 1 over negative 0.2528. Which is, but that part's not hard, so you're probably wondering at this point, why is this one any harder than the last one? Because I just did the exact same thing I did on the last one. Type that in your calculator.
It probably not hard.
That works. It's just not right. It's not the right answer.
Why are you telling us to do the wrong stuff?
Yeah,
I'm just telling us to do the wrong stuff.
Not. We're just not doing it.
you know, we,
So you're in degrees. Okay, she's in degrees. She got negative 75.813 degrees. Or someone who was at radians.
Negative 1.323.
hey, Bryce, guess what?
What?
You're wrong.
But I did say in degrees, and the reason it said in degrees is it's trying to help your brain out because it knows this is a hard question. This is a rare one. Tangent and cotangent are the only ones you have to worry about this with.
It's wrong.
Why is it wrong? If we did everything right, why is it wrong?
Because it's negative.
What are the answers? Now, tangent, you can have a negative, right? But cotangent, where is it defined?
1 and 2.
Quadrants 1 and 2. So, can we change the negative 75 degrees and move it into quadrant 2?
Yeah, add 180.
So, yeah, add 180 or do 180 minus the 75. So, however you want to think about that, but I needed the answer to be in quadrant 2. The only time this happens is on tangent and cotangent. So, tan inverse is going to give you the answer in the wrong quadrant. Now, the reason that's the only one that'll do that is because sine and cosecant are defined in the same quadrants. Secant and cosine are defined in the same quadrants, but tangent and cotangent aren't. So that's the only time this problem will out, and it's a rarity. It's not something that comes up all the time. Anything's fair. 180 minus 75.813. And what did we get?
4.187.
4.
104.
Okay, makes more sense. Yeah, on cotangent inverse. If it's just a tan inverse, your calculator just pops up the right answers. When you're trying to do cotangent inverse calculator, because there's not a cotangent inverse button. Okay, graphing by hand inverse trig functions. It's not that bad. Relax. Say that again. Yeah, flip up the line. What do you mean by that?
From one arc.
Y equals X.
Yes, it's a cosine, but yes.
Cosine.
Yes. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna think about what I would do if I were graphing cosine. I am only gonna graph cosine from 0 to pi. Stop at pi. Because cosine inverse is only defined in the first and second quadrants, right? So I'm just gonna do 0 to pi. I'm gonna think about cosine values from 0 to pi. So I'm actually doing x and cosine of x, not cosine inverse. I'll think about that in a minute. So I'm just going to think about what would be some values on the cosine graph from 0 to pi. I can do as many as I want, right? 0. What's cosine of 0?
1.
I could do pi over 2. Let's do pi over 4 first, but yes. I could do pi over 2. 0. 3 pi over 4. And pi.
1.
Negative 1. If you agree that's 4 points on a cosine graph, right, that I would use to graph. Probably not even all of those. I probably would just use 0, 1, pi over 2, 0, and pi negative 1. But so I'm going to plot those, except what am I going to do? Switch the x's and y's. Okay? I'm going to graph the inverse, which is just the x's and y's. So, but I'm going to make my y values go from 0 to pi. And I'm going to make my x values go from 1 to 1. And so, at the x value of 1, what is the y value? The x value of 1, what's the y value?
0.
At the x value of radical 2 of 2, which is about 1. Say that again. 0.75, is that about right? 0.7. So, maybe about right here at 0.71. Pi over 4 is a fourth of that. The x value of 0, I get pi over 2. The x value of negative radical 2 over 2, so negative 0.7, so about right there. I get 3 pi over 4. And the x value of negative 1, I get pi. Now you have two options. You can do that every time. Or you can memorize it, it's up to you. It is not as common as sine and cosine. So if you did just want to take cosine and side, that's fine. If you are really lazy and don't have to plot those points, you can memorize where they are and go from there. So it's kind of up to you how you do that. I don't care as long as you get the right answer. Like, you know how you have the graph of cosine memorized? You do, right? Because you know at 0 it's 1 and you do this, right? Or you can just do this.
Doesn't it just go through cosine? It's the squiggles and you start.
Yeah. But sine,
We just.
If you wanted to not have to point plot, if it asks you to graph it out and not back to the test, wanted to not have to plot points, right? Or you could plot points. Okay, so now let's talk about sine inverse and then what we do with two sine inverse. Before I graph two sine inverse, I'm just going to graph plain sine inverse.
Okay. I like it.
This is a plain sine inverse graph. So, side note, I'm just going to graph sine of x. Or think about the graph of sine of x. Now we do know that sine inverse is defined from negative power 2 to power 2, right? So I'm going to pick some unit circle values between negative power 2 and power 2. As many as you want to see the graph. We're going, the sine inverse is defined from negative power 2 to power 2. So I'm going to pick values in the first and second, or in the first and fourth quadrants. Find out what the sine values are. And I can find all of these on my unit circle. Right? What is the sine of negative pi over 2? What is the sine of negative pi over 4? Negative root of 2 over 2. Sine of 0?
0.
Sine of pi over 4? And sine of pi over 2. See, a lot of you not taking notes. I will not ever check your notes. It's your call, but turn this over, and every time I ask a question, think about it. But I have to use it.
Go home and tell your mom.
Negative angles go backwards.
Paul Evans and
It really, you should put this up.
No, something. We feel like I can try.
Sometimes it's going to draw the thing. It was 2 sine inverses. Okay, so I'm going to plot these points. Except, what am I going to do different?
You're going to swap them.
I'm going to switch the x to y, right? So my x-axis, I'm going to label from negative 1 to 1, and my y-axis, I'm going to label from negative pi over 2 pi over 2.
Why do we do that?
Trying to graph sine inverse of x. Any inverse, you switch x's and y's. And isn't that true for me to algebra 2? Can you do that in algebra 2? Maybe. I know what it says. Right now, I'm just going to graph sine inverse. We'll go from there. I think we can test it out if we try to do it. So I get negative 1 for my x value, negative pi over 2 for my y value. 2 pi over 4.
Let me see if they want me.
And pi over 2, 1. If not a straight line, it's got a
No, it's James.
little curve in it.
That's pretty.
Like the perfect.
If it's perfectly straight, then you put the 0.7 at closer to 0.5. You know what I mean?
I did.
You would have had to put it.
Wow, you're smart. I can do that.
We're on level 1.
Okay.
Drawn the perfect.
Any questions? Any questions so far? What is this graph of? Y'all need to stay with me, stop.
Sine is first.
This is sine inverse of x.
Yep.
So how do I graph 2 sine
Times
inverse?
everything by 2.
Times everything, like which part of it though?
It's gonna have a vertical stretch.
Yes, vertical stretch. So I can multiply all the y values by 2.
Wait, the original or?
No, Luke. So I want 2 times sine inverse. Well, this is sine inverse. So I'm going to multiply all the y values by 2. So what does pi over 2 become?
Pi.
Let's say up here at pi. This one was pi over 4, so it becomes 2. 0 stays at 0. This negative pi over 4 becomes negative pi over 2.
Multiply everything by 2.
Pi over 2. Any questions about that?
That'll have a straight in the
Well, it would be because it's vertically stretched. Okay.
Wait, so keep 2 more. Wait, are you getting more homework today?
I'm gonna hand the review out.
You're
If you haven't gotten it yet, but no new other homework. Just give you the review. The review assignment will be due on Tuesday.
Serious?
That
No.
is quiz. We don't have school on Friday.
Is that?
I forgot to speak.
Okay, stop talking. I need you with me. There are very few things we do in here that I get to say you need to know this for the ACT. But this is actually something that shows up on the ACT sometimes. So, one more ACT field. You've got like one left, and then your ACT map is done. But this is, you know, of the 4 trick questions that show up on the ACT, sometimes this is one of them. And it's cosine of sine inverse of 2/3. Or something like that. And they will even sometimes throw in variables in that, which I will show you something. So I want to do cosine of sine inverse of 2/3. Oh, what am I going to do first? Do the inside part, sine inverse of 2/3. And yes, I'm going to draw a triangle for that. So, sine inverse of 2/3, right? That's the angle.
Set over adjacent.
Almost, yes.
I wanted to
So would you all agree that sine inverse of 2/3 gives me this angle? Whatever that angle is. So this is
Teachers, some of your attention please. At this time we're going to have students come around and pick up the AAP attendance forms, so if you'll please put them on your doors.
last week they never came to do that, but
Well, I'm gonna break this one.
okay. Then I want, is everyone listening? The cosine of that angle. Can I find that?
Yes.
So do that. Everyone do that. Stop talking. Don't know you're on video.
What would be different versus figures?
I can answer that question by hand for regulars. And unless it hurts. It would be a tough question. But you're going to work from the inside out. Any questions about that one? Let's look at the next one.
That's just
I wanted the cosine of the angle that makes sine. What was it, 2/3? So what do I want this time?
the secant of the cotangent.
I want the secant of the angle that makes cotangent -15/8. Right? What quadrant is cotangent inverse negative?
1 and 2.
No, the bottom two.
Go in one answer. Quadrant 2. Why quadrant 2? It's negative and it's only defined in the first and second quadrants. It's negative. Cotangent is.
I'm still for Jason.
And in here it's Jason.
Adjacent over opposite. So which one of those two things is negative?
The 18.
The
15. How do you know?
because the 8 goes up.
And how do you find the third side? Did anyone know that one?
So two.
I thought about
It was the burn.
I don't know how to do algebra 2 anymore, so I'm gonna have to ACT with that.
If you do need any ACT math help, let me know. I do have a little formula sheet that I can give you because it used to come outside class that has the Pythagorean triples on it that do show up on the ACT. So if you want to memorize those Pythagorean triples, that can help on the ACT. Okay, so so this is the angle, right? So remember, this is just an angle. And I want the secant of that angle. Secant is hypotenuse over adjacent.
Negative 17 over negative 7.
Again, it is, isn't it?
That's
This does show up on the ACT. You know how there are four trick questions on the ACT?
What's going on?
Wait,
We are going to skip those for now. We don't. That's the reason we're skipping them. We will do them later, but we're not going to do them today. If there are any, were there any like this on your homework? If there are any subtraction in between or a double angle in between, skip those for now. I used this book out of order, and there's something you have to know before you can do that. That's the next chapter. So we can't do those yet. Next chapter, I'll teach you how to do this. But you can. So if there's those two problems on your homework, skip through. I rearranged some things up here. It's a little earlier than I used to teach it, so that's why I have it there. So just skip those two. I'll teach you how to do this later. Those probably show on the ACT. This might. This is the one that you remember me telling you that sometimes they put variables in it on the ACT. Now a lot of times they do draw the picture for you, which is quite helpful. But they'll draw the picture. So I want to find cotangent of secant inverse of u, and it's just write it as an algebraic expression of u. This is actually one I've seen on ACT quite a bit. They will often draw the picture for you though, but so I'm going to draw a picture. It does tell me u is greater than 0. It's helping me out, so it's telling me it's in quadrant 1. If secant inverse of u is an angle, that means the hypotenuse would be u, and the adjacent side would be 1. Does this kind of look a little bit familiar now that you see the u and the 1? Okay. They often draw that part for you. Could I find cotangent? What do I need to find cotangent?
That's
This side.
minus 1, square root of 3 squared minus square. That's what that looks like.
You can't do anything to it though, because you can't distribute the 1/2 power. So it's just stuck. The square root of u squared minus 1. Cotangent is adjacent over opposite. So it's 1 over the square root of u squared minus 1. If you wanted to rationalize it, you can. I'm not going to make you. But if you did, you would just get the square root of u squared minus 1 over u squared minus 1. I don't care if you rationalize it or not, but if you chose to. Right, isn't that what you get if you did rationalize? It's not really important. Either way works. And again, we're going to shift up and pick this up. Okay, this is your homework. There are 2 problems I hear that you can't use. So, what are those 2 problems? I'm not telling you what they are. Send it back for you. Skip 38 and 40. It is, yeah, the same thing I gave you yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Skip 38 and 40. What do you do those on another day?